You are now listening to The World Within with your hosts, Christian and Ethan.
Hello and welcome to The World Within podcast with your hosts, Christian and Ethan. Ethan, how's it going?
Hey, what's going on? It's me.
You know, I'm excited for this first podcast, ready to get this started.
Yeah, I'm excited to do this. It's been something I wanted to do for a while.
Yeah. We're just two brothers, pretty much raised in Nebraska, and we moved to Arizona last year.
My whole life raised in Nebraska.
Yeah, whole life. But here we are in Phoenix, and now we're starting this podcast, so welcome.
Yeah, it's pretty good. I'm pretty excited for this.
Yeah. So what are we talking about today, Ethan?
Today we're going to be talking about the Chicago Tylenol killers. Not just Chicago, it's actually Illinois, but it's nationwide with copycats all throughout the nation. And there's a lot of craze that went around the whole nation because people were terrified that their Tylenol pills would be poisoned with cyanide.
I mean, that would be pretty terrifying. I would say most of the population uses Tylenol or some sort of pain reliever. Yeah.
I mean, I use Tylenol quite a lot when I played football. I'd take it probably every day, really.
Yeah, and think about, like, before all these, like, federal laws that got in place because of this, how easily it could have been tampered with.
For sure.
Just absolutely crazy. So, 7 people died from this thing.
Yeah, seven in the Illinois area, I believe, during the time in the 1980s.
Which is just absolutely crazy to me. So, there were several copycat killings. No one was charged from this thing, though. No one at all.
Yeah, they had a few suspects, but they couldn't have enough evidence to pin it on anyone.
But are you pretty sure who did it?
I'm not pretty sure. I think it's pretty wide open. I think there's evidence that any of them could do it, but
which is crazy if there was a worldwide craze. Like, think about this today. If this happened, they would have been caught day one.
Right, yeah. Well, there's a lot more. They've put a lot into making sure this would never happen again.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. This happened in 1982, I believe, right?
It was in the 80s. It was if you include everything, it was the whole 80s, I'd say.
The whole 80s.
All 80s.
That must have a lot of money lost then. A lot of money lost.
Especially from Johnson & Johnson.
All right, so let's talk about the suspects here. Who do you think did it the most?
Well, would you want to go into the suspects here? You want to go in? I honestly think that Roger Arnold actually is pretty. I mean, there's a lot of circumstantial against him, and when there's a lot of circumstances, there has to be some truth somewhere in there.
He sounds like a cool guy, though. Roger Arnold.
That's a pretty cool name.
Hey, hun, I'm going to get some beers with Roger Arnold. You know. That just sounds like something you did.
A lot.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Yeah.
He might have lived there.
So he was arrested because he was saying some sketchy things about the murders that led to police wanting to get involved.
Well, he wasn't arrested due to that. He was arrested because he shot someone who he believed turned him into the police.
Well, that'll do it. That'll do it.
If I'm suspicious someone turned me into the police, I don't think I'm going to shoot them.
I don't know. It's the 80s.
That is true. You could get away with a lot.
You could get away with a lot. So he was hoping
shooting someone on the street might be too much. Might be pushing the limits there.
Well, so the guy he shot, did he live?
I don't believe so. I believe he died.
Well, that's unfortunate for him. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it would be quite unfortunate.
So Roger Arnold is who your number one guy. What did he do? What was like his connections and everything?
So Roger Arnold, he worked. He was a warehouse worker. He worked with one of the victims' fathers. He worked with Mary Reiner's father, and he also. So Adam Jane is part of the Janus family. He was the one who bought the bottle for them, and so he bought it at a Jewel pharmacy store. And I've never heard of Jewel, have you?
I've never. I know jewelry.
Yeah, it's I've never heard of this. I don't know if it's still still out there.
I mean,
I'm
probably
sure it's
not after
regional.
this.
Yeah,
Probably
not.
took a big hit.
Yeah. But so Adam Janus, he purchased the bottle at a jewel store where Roger Arnold, he worked as a warehouse person for Jewel. So that's a very circumstantial evidence, but it's very interesting connection there. And so he bought that, and Mary Reiner, the one that died here, he worked with her father, and she got it from a store. They didn't say it was a jewel store, so I'm not sure which store she bought it from. I'm assuming it was probably just a Walgreens or a CVS around the area.
Just some drugstore type of thing.
Right. So I believe she bought it at a store across the street from the psychiatric ward where Roger Arnold's wife was staying in.
So this all happened within a matter of days of each other, correct?
Correct. So the Janus family, there was 3 victims there. There was Adam Janus, and then Stanley Janus, his brother, and Teresa Janus, his sister. Mm-hmm. They were in the family there, which is very unfortunate that it was one
just
family.
Boom,
there.
boom, boom. Yeah,
right.
Just dropping. You would have to think like your family was cursed. Like you're not going to be like, oh, it's the Tylenol, you know? Like
right. Like I would be like, I'm surprised they found that it was the Tylenol.
I would be terrified to be in that family in that day. Could you imagine?
Right.
You're just like
in the moment.
Yeah.
Just 3 of them dropped down,
and they didn't know that it was the Tylenol right away.
Right. So Roger Arnold, he was quite the character. So after he shot his this man who he believed was the one who led or turned him into the police here. Not a good start to his story here.
The big thing with that though is, you know, in like Red Dead where they're like, "Oh, I just saw you murder someone." Do you think that's what happened? He's like, "I'm going to the police," and he's like, "No, you're not." Boom.
No, I believe he probably this poor guy was just at the bar, and this guy was just going off on one of his drunk rants because it appears he was at the bar quite a lot.
An alcoholic, yeah, that's a trend in America.
Yeah, well, so he shot this man, and I'm assuming it was just. This guy probably gave him a dirty look after some of the remarks that he was saying.
Yeah.
And he just was...
More of a puzzled look, probably. Like, what the hell are you saying?
Who is this guy?
Yeah.
What's going on over here? So he killed him, and then so the police went to Roger Arnold's house, and they found how-to crime manuals.
How to crime.
Which, if you have how-to crime manuals in your house,
you're obviously evil, right?
It's not a good find, or I believe it would be a good find for the police.
Where do you find a how-to crime book?
Yeah, could you go to like half-price bookstores and get a how-to crime manual?
And was it just how-to crime, like, and then each chapter was crimes, or was it like each individual book was like how to rob a jewelry store?
If I was writing the how-to crime manuals, I would break it off into multiple books.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're making, you got to make it serious. Yeah, that's a crime of itself.
Scamming the criminals.
Who's worse, Charles Manson or the author of how-to crime books?
that's the question here. So yeah, so they found a few things in Roger Arnold's, which I think is very interesting. So they found a chemistry like set with beakers and all this stuff, which you would need if you're gonna like put cyanide into pills.
Yeah, that's not an easy thing to do.
Right. And so they found all this equipment, but one thing they didn't find in his house was the potassium cyanide needed for these.
Yeah, because he used it all.
That could be it. He could have used it all, but what they did find was potassium carbonate, which isn't the same thing at all, but he definitely was doing something with this chemistry set.
So
he's a warehouse worker.
So they arrested him for shooting and killing. Let's see, his name is John Stancha.
Yeah, Stancha.
Yeah, was the guy he killed. And so he shot and killed him. But my thing with it is he's so sketched out about this that he kills a guy, outside of the bar or whatever.
In which he only got 30 years. He only got 30 years for that. And he got out on parole.
Well, that's crazy.
Yeah, it's
that's the 80s again. Let's keep
that is the
keep
80s.
sticking with that trend. Okay, so I was hearing that another potential suspect was the Unabomber.
Yeah, so Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber, as he's known as. So he was a big. They really wanted. I feel like the FBI wanted to close this, so they're like, we have Ted Kaczynski, a known terrorist, terrorist.
Yeah, people already hate this guy.
Right,
Yeah,
he's a big people do not like Ted Kaczynski.
rightfully so, I think.
So he so the whole it's not very stable what they believe Ted Kaczynski would be the guy for here.
Yeah, not enough evidence. They're just kind of trying to.
It was very like, oh, Ted Kaczynski could do this. So
It's a possibility.
Ted
Yeah, Ted Kaczynski, he's smart. So
right. Let's just have
there's some
Ted
correlation
Kaczynski.
there, and the FBI is known throughout history to just
Right.
force.
wrap this
Yeah, let's finish this up. Good publicity kind of thing.
Right. So one reason they thought it would be Ted Kaczynski is that he was from Illinois. He's a Illinois native here,
Okay.
and that's where
I guess
the
there's
Tylenol murders
some-
happened here. But I
Yeah.
believe there's actually quite a lot of Illinois natives here. So
Yeah, I think there's just a lot of Illinois natives in general. Like, I don't see a correlation there, but I saw that there's a correlation with his fascination of wood.
right. So Ted Kaczynski, as most people would know, he lived in a cabin in the woods. He was a very well-educated person, and he decided to throw all it away and go move to the woods in Montana.
Which
And
is just
so-
strange.
Right, and so like a lot of his bombs would have wood in it, and like a lot of victims would have like wood in their names, or like had something to do with wood, or lived in like a Wake Forest or something.
Do you think it was a potential, like something in his childhood that was related to wood?
Do you think he likes wood or hates wood?
Well, I hate morning wood. That's kind of unfortunate in the morning. So maybe he was just.
Do you think he would get enraged
maybe
every
he-
time he
may-
woke up?
Maybe he liked it though.
Like I mean, maybe he was so like in love with it. Like maybe it was too much of a good thing for him.
Like, did he ever go on record
why would
and
you live in
say
the
that he
woods?
likes wood though, or is it just a weird kind of?
I think if he went on the record to say I like wood, it would not be good for his image, which is not. It's already not great.
That's true. But his bombs were made out of wood, right?
Well, they had wood components in it.
Well, yeah. I mean, you can't really make a wood bomb.
Right.
I don't
Well,
know
I
how
mean-
effective that would be.
So it's very substantial. Like it's not great evidence here that you're going on, especially from the FBI.
Yeah. And how about I heard Johnson & Johnson, who are responsible for making and distributing Tylenol, both their middle names are Wood.
Which is very strange that both of them are Wood Johnson.
Wood Johnson.
Which is not a
not a
great name.
great name to have. That's a
Wood Johnson is not a good one. I'm assuming that school was quite rough for them,
probably.
but they're doing quite well for themselves. Actually,
Yeah,
I believe they're not.
I will take the name Wood Johnson for that kind of
Right.
money.
So another piece of connections that they were interested in for Ted Kaczynski here is that there was a killing similar to the Tylenol killings.
Mhm.
He name was J. Adam Mitchell. He died 2 months before the Tylenol murders, and he was in Wyoming, which is closer to Montana than
Yeah, that's
Chicago.
decent. Yeah, on the way, if you will.
right. So that was a big thing that people were like, "Oh, well, this is over here by Ted Kaczynski."
It would be a good my first victim kind of thing. You
right,
know?
like it was like a test
run. Yeah, a test run. Yeah, exactly. So in February of 2009, the FBI reopened the case so they could use forensics because obviously it's better than the 1980s, which we've come to realize is the Stone Age for some reason.
Not great forensics evidence there.
So they reviewed the case and they asked for the DNA of the Unabomber, but the officers said that the FBI was prepared for a court order, do all that mumbo jumbo and everything, and said yes, but under one condition, and it was like a whole auction of his belongings.
Right. So there was usually after a big name is like arrested, they'll have a big auction to sell off the belongings from the terrorists in this situation.
Yeah.
So they
which would be a weird auction to go to.
Right. Who goes to these?
Like, could you imagine? There's probably this one guy, and he's like, "Hey, I have Adolf Hitler paintings, the Unabomber's famous morning wood,
Like his
yeah, just a bunch of random shit." You're like, "Okay, I'm leaving this house right now. Thanks."
Yeah, I don't trust.
I got it on sale at this auction.
Keep a good database of the
hey, maybe that's the FBI's strategy. Yeah, you have a good point there.
But so yes, continue here.
So his reasonings were the FBI could or could not be correct about it, and it's wrong to pin someone innocent because 5%, 3%, or 1% or whatever of Americans have the same kind of profile as a guy that could do this.
Yeah, because they want to do
or a girl.
Right, they could do DNA testing, and so your DNA, you could share 5% of your DNA with someone that you've never even have no idea who is.
Right,
and they could try and pin it on him because it's 5% of his DNA matched the Tylenol killer.
Yeah.
So what he thought is that he should, if he asks for the auction not to happen, he could have all of his belongings for the FBI to do a thorough investigation, because Ted Kaczynski is, I don't think at all, it's very not plausible that he was the Tylenol killer.
Yeah. And then so this auction happened, they auctioned off all of his stuff.
Right. So what he wanted in prison, so they came to him and they're like, we're going to ask you, would you voluntarily give us your DNA because we're investigating this? And he said that I'll do it under one condition, that if there's no auction of my belongings, because he believed that if he had all of his auctions, that he would be able to prove that he's never had potassium cyanide.
Right, that makes sense.
Which, if you're the FBI, wouldn't you not want the auction as well? So you could do a thorough
so you could have all, that's all evidence in a way, But
I'm sure that money would go to the state of Montana and stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm sure Montana was like, we're doing the auction no matter what.
Yeah, that's a big case. I'm sure a lot of freaks out there would buy crap.
Listen, if you could have Ted Kaczynski's typewriter, that'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, but I mean, it'd just be a weird thing. Who are you showing that to? Hey, Mom, look at my typewriter that I got from a horrible person.
Yeah, so Ted Kaczynski's it's a reach.
Not likely. Yeah, it's a big reach. Yeah.
You're missing something there. Something to connect it. You'd have to give me that piece of evidence for me to even... Because it's such a reach with
and I feel like the FBI used a lot of resources and everything to kind of focus on him in a way to where they weren't as interested in everyone else, because that's not a big headline, I guess, as big as a headline.
Right, it's a publicity, I feel more.
Yeah, which is the FBI for you. All right, so we got our third suspect, James Lewis.
Would you want to talk about Lori Dan here? Because
Lori Dan's the crucial piece of everything here.
So Lori Dan, he poisoned and shot an unknown number of people here, but in Illinois. He was in Illinois here. But so there wasn't enough evidence or connections for Lori Dan to be part of this. I'm assuming it's just a known poisoner of the time.
Well, shot an unknown number of people in an isolated incident, and they're like, "Oh, this person's a madman,"
Right.
so he might have done it. Like that was your
However,
correlation.
Lori Dan, I believe, has more evidence than Ted Kaczynski here.
That's true. I mean, at least
one of them's
lived in
known for
Illinois.
things.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, James Lewis here.
This guy's a
Go on
basket
to him.
case.
Yeah, is he?
All right. Yeah, so James Lewis, he was their prime suspect in this situation.
Okay.
So October 6, 1982, 1 week after the first deaths of the Janus family, he sent a ransom note to Johnson & Johnson. And so how they knew it was from him is because he had fingerprints on the note.
Which, when they tested all these Tylenol bottles, there weren't fingerprints that were on the shelf that were
Correct.
contaminated.
There was no, which leads you to why would he have his fingerprints on the note if he knew about fingerprints?
But I would say these dudes are freaks, so somewhat of them want to get caught. Yep.
Yes, I agree. But
it's kind of his way by saying, "Hey, I'm the killer," without saying it. You know.
But what I'm saying is, 1 week after, you're only gonna wait 1 week before you come.
That's true. Why are you
just
stopping?
Doesn't make sense.
Ran out of cyanide.
Maybe you couldn't get any more cyanide. Maybe his cyanide plug was lacking.
Yeah,
so he's like,
he was
might as well
lacking.
just come clean.
He's like, "Hey, there's some crazy ass murders going on, so I can't really sell
lay low
you."
here for a minute. Yeah, so he asked for $1 million from Johnson & Johnson to be wired to a bank account, which, funny enough, the bank account actually wasn't his. So his wife here, John Lewis's wife, she was scammed in a sort for $511 here by Frederick Miller McCahey.
Okay, yeah, that's a douchebag kind of sounding name.
Frederick. It's an interesting name.
Yeah, it's like, what is this, the 1980 or 1780, you know?
Right here. If my name was Frederick, I mean, you got to pick Fred or Rick.
You
keep
can't.
Frederick.
Yeah.
So the bank account was Frederick Miller McCahey's, and so what John Lewis believed is he could write this ransom note, and it would bring light to Frederick Miller McCahey and the $511 he stole from his wife.
Which doesn't seem like a lot.
In the scheme of things here, in the situation that John Lewis has put himself in because of this.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like anything.
It was actually $511 and a few cents here.
But it's proof that he was desperate.
Right. So it could be that it's a conspiracy that he did this to throw them off the scent.
That's true. So his early life, he chased his mother with an axe at 19.
Right. So that's not a good start.
That's not a good start. But we've all been mad at our mothers where we've wanted to chase her with an axe. He just had an axe accessible with him at the time. So I'm not fully blaming him for that one.
Right, he's just an axe was sitting there. His mom was nagging him because he didn't clean his room.
Yeah, which annoying, right?
It happens sometimes.
Yeah, it's just, come on, Mom.
It happens to the best of us.
I guarantee the mom did not tell him to clean his room after that, though.
Yeah, I mean, it was probably effective.
Yeah, it probably worked.
Yeah, so at 19 he...
Sorry about that. We took a little break there. All right, back to Mr. Lewis here. So he was diagnosed with schizophrenia.
Right, so in 1966, he was put into the Missouri State Mental Hospital after he took 36 Anacin pills, which Anacin is just ibuprofen and caffeine. But he was
there's a link then between kind of death and pills there.
So something you'll find with James Lewis here is he has his past has a lot of connections to pills and like poisoning kind of.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something interesting.
And so he avoided the Vietnam War draft. He was a little draft dodger.
Right, and later on he would claim that him being diagnosed with the catatonic schizophrenia and taking the pills was in order to dodge the draft.
Which I don't blame him for that one,
Right.
but I think most of Vietnam soldiers had schizophrenia, so he might have blended in though. So we might have needed him.
That's true. He could have poisoned all of the.
True, he could have put cyanide pills in whatever Vietnam people eat.
So he was diagnosed with that, and then later on in his life here, in 1978, the summer of 1978. It's not as good as the summer of 96 or 69 here, but so he was charged and acquitted for the murder of Raymond West, and Raymond West was found dismembered in his own home, which is not something you want to be associated with.
Not to be the dismembered guy, yeah.
Right, and I wouldn't want to be charged with that.
I'd rather be charged with it than dismembered, though.
That's true.
You know, at the end of the day.
That's very true here. But so he has quite the past here.
But he was initially charged and then it was acquitted.
Right, he was. I mean, he just has connections to that.
So he's good at getting away with crimes. Potentially. There's a
Potentially.
potential there.
Right. So that was another addition to his very violent criminal past here. And so he was later him and his wife. This is him and his wife.
Which he caught a real catch here, obviously.
That is true. They were deeply in love, apparently. It's
True love with crimes.
that's something, that's what we're all looking for in life.
Yes, just Bonnie and Clyde-esque.
Right. So it's quite the pairing. So him and his wife here had a short-lived business adventure, and take a guess here of what their business plan was here.
I think they wanted to have a wholesome business where they would sell almonds at the side of the road and get some side cash.
It was actually so what their plan was here, a little bit different, but close enough. They were going to import pill making machines from India.
Oh, okay. That's very similar.
Right. So that's not, that's a normal thing.
Yeah, and that's
That's a
already
good business plan.
pill. That's all this guy is about. He's about the pills.
He's very into pills.
So in 1981, he was suspected for falsifying applications using fake information, which, hey, another crime.
Right. And so his him and his wife, I'm assuming he came home and he's like, "Hey honey, I bought all these things for you, but it's actually I've been just stealing credit cards and falsifying information on them, and
Hope you don't mind, hon.
we need to go. we're going to Chicago.
We got a dip.
the great land of Chicago here."
So, but it was in December 4th of 81 that the police searched his home, and they're like, all right, we got a dip, right?
Right.
So
They were gone.
So, all right, so they moved to Chicago under the pretense of them doing illegal shit.
Right. So they lived in Chicago. They moved to Chicago and they lived for a year there under fake names. So they were in Chicago in the 80s. So that's not a good.
Hey, when did these Tylenol killings happen?
They actually happened in the 80s.
Wow, there's some correlation there.
Not a good connection here for James Lewis here. So they lived there for a year, and in 1982, September 4th, this was 25 days before the murder, him and his wife bought tickets to go back to New York here.
Okay.
So this is something that deviates from the murders here. So he would not be in Chicago
At the time.
here.
And they were saying that these capsules would have kind of deteriorated the cyanide would have deteriorated these capsules after just a few days.
Right. So if you have cyanide in a Tylenol capsule, it will just completely eat the outer shelling there.
Yeah, it's pretty strong stuff.
Yeah, it's not something that
Enough
really
to kill
want.
7 people and more.
right here. So they're saying it would be implausible for him to be able to do it 25 days before. It just wouldn't work.
Yeah, it just doesn't make sense. But was there evidence that he even got on the plane to New York and everything? Like, could he have just bought the ticket as a good, like, hey, look.
To throw him off the scent.
Yeah,
here.
Exactly.
Right.
This guy's obviously pretty smart.
Right. He's gotten away with quite a lot in his life.
Yeah.
So he could have. But so a big thing about James Lewis here. So the 25 days before, people would write off that it's not him because he wasn't there.
Right.
But we're not sure if he could have just came back to. He would be familiar. He lived there for a year. He would be familiar with
with the area and everything. Yeah.
Right. So that's something.
So they never had any evidence that would guarantee that it was him.
Not enough strong evidence.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly. So he got away. He got away with that.
Not a good look.
The letter isn't a good look. He just wanted $1 million, don't we all? You know.
He didn't want the $1 million.
Well, that's true. His wife did, but as we know, true love.
Listen, he didn't care about money. He just cared about his wife.
His wife. At the end of the day, it was just about his wife. And he was schizophrenic, so also
True
probably
love.
his other 5 friends that didn't exist.
In his head here. Yeah, so...
So, because of that letter, he was convicted for that, right?
Right, it was for extortion here is what he...
Yeah,
what he got in trouble
extortion,
for.
yeah.
But
He's sentenced 20 years, though.
Right, so before
prison.
that, he... no one could place him in Chicago during the time. But if he was living under the fake name and everything.
Yeah, then it was already hard to place him there in the first place, yeah.
And I can't imagine these two had a lot of friends in Chicago.
Or friends in general.
They had their make-believe friends.
That's true.
All they needed
he
was
did.
each other.
He did at least. She wasn't schizophrenic, at least that we knew
maybe
of.
a little bit.
Yeah, well, yeah, you'd probably have to
She
be
might have
like-
just been a figment of James's
That's true.
imagination
She
here.
might have never been even a thing.
But yeah, so no one could place him. However, there was a CCTV footage of a man with. So James Lewis had a beard, and he was kind of a not big build, but he had a certain build, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
you just described probably 70% of men
probably
in the United
100%
States
of Chicago.
That's
men.
big, monstrous beast with beards.
Right. So there was a CCTV of a man with a beard that kind of resembled James, and he was messing with some Tylenol bottles and everything, but it was pretty bad quality. It was in the 80s.
I mean, CCTV wasn't what it is today. Like, it was probably pretty blurry, and
they didn't have facial. It wasn't James or it wasn't the Bourne Legacy where they were doing
where they know exactly
analyzing the faces and everything here. But so they couldn't link him. That evidence was whatever. They couldn't. There was nothing there.
Yeah,
really.
but I think that they probably believe that more than likely was him. So under the extortion, they got him for 20 years. I think that was kind of their best case scenario. We're gonna get this guy at least. Yeah.
So he served. He was sentenced for 20 years. He served around 13 of them. He was released in 1995. But so while James was in prison here, he offered his help to explain in detail how someone would go about doing these pill murders, which you probably shouldn't do if it wasn't you.
Yeah, if it wasn't you, but
maybe just serve your prison time.
Yeah,
don't talk
just kind of shut up.
Right.
But he was probably the trend with these guys is they're proud of what they did, so he wanted to show off a little bit. I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm sure in prison there was a whole thing where like everyone was talking about what they did. His bunkmate was probably like, "What are you in here for?" And he's like, he's not going to say extortion.
Yeah,
come on,
yawn. You're not.
He's gonna be like,
no street
I
cred
did
there.
The Tylenol murders.
Yeah,
right?
I'm a tough guy.
Right. So I'm just. It could have been that, but I mean, he shouldn't really be talking about it if it wasn't him.
Yeah.
I mean, why would you go into detail about how you would do it? But he was also schizophrenic.
But also, he was schizophrenic, but also 13 years in prison. That's quite a long time. You get bored. You kind of lose things to talk about, I would think.
Eventually, I mean, you only can play Go Fish for so long.
Yeah, that's what they do in prison. They just play goldfish or go fish all day.
Maybe that toilet wine got him talking. Here.
That's true. Toilet wine is
pretty good.
I've heard it is good. I heard that after the first initial taste, it's pretty good. It's pretty solid
after
stuff.
You get over the taste,
and then drinking it out of the toilet that you just saw Pablo, your bunkmate, who's 280 pounds, take a massive shit in.
I mean, that'll happen. You got to do something.
That's true. Maybe it adds to the flavor. You can taste his tacos that he ate for
taco seasoning.
There you go.
That'd be pretty good.
Not that Pablo and tacos have any correlation. We were just saying this is prison food. You eat tacos in prison, right? Right? That's prison,
There's it's prison wine. It's pretty good. It's what you have at the time.
Anyway, so he was released in 1995.
Right.
And him and his wife, which she never went to jail, right?
I don't believe so.
She got away with it.
She didn't do anything, She just lost $511 and some change.
Yeah, at the end of the day, she was the true victim.
She's the only victim in this, I'd say.
Yeah, that's true. I would agree with that.
But so this James character and his wife lived in Massachusetts
after he was released.
After he was released. Yeah. And in 2010, James, very bright man, very smart, he decided the brilliant idea was to publish Poison the Doctor's Dilemma.
A book?
He published a book, and it was about it was a fictional story about a poison in the water and people drinking it and dying and stuff.
I think at that point it was just him saying, you all pretty much know that I was the guy that did it, so I'm just going to keep toying with you guys.
Right, it's like, what are you going to do?
Yeah, what evidence you got?
Right, so he published this book, and he then claimed it had nothing to do with the Tylenol murders, because people were like, okay, what are you doing, my guy? So he claimed that, and then he stated that he regretted sending the letter to Johnson & Johnson.
Yeah, which I probably would have too if I had to serve 13 years in prison drinking Pablo's taco water wine,
Maybe that wine was really good, though. Maybe that was the bright spot.
Maybe that was it.
But so yeah, he then in 2010, January 2010, he gave a 40-minute interview about his book, is what he believed, on TV. But when he was doing the interview, everyone only cared about the Tylenol murders because no one cared about his book.
Yeah, no one cared, which probably helped the sales of his book because they're like, oh, I got to read this.
That's the only reason people bought his book.
Yeah, which he probably made that $511 for his wife doing that. He should have started with that instead of...
Yeah, just start with the book.
Yeah, and then move on to extortion.
Yeah. Maybe
there's steps. You got to have steps in this.
Extortion's like on the bottom of what you should do. I mean, it's a sweet thing he did for his wife.
Yeah.
The question is, how did she pay him back in a healthy relationship here?
Well, they're still together.
She pays him back every day.
Yeah. By, what?
Just, being his wife.
Yeah, that's enough payment.
That's true. So he gave an interview. It was a 48-minute interview. And he talked about, like, everyone only cared about the Tylenol murders. And every time someone asked him a question, he'd be like, talk to my lawyer. I'm not answering any questions about this.
Yeah, which is he was finally smart at one point.
Yeah, he actually, I'm sure his lawyer really pounded that into his head, just not.
Yeah, don't say anything. You're already releasing this book that I probably told you not to do. Yeah, but you need to pay back your wife, so I understand it.
Yeah, I understand you're in love with your wife.
$511.
That's a lot of money here. And so he would just be like, don't talk to me. This is just refer all your questions to my lawyer. And he just left the interview because he was just done.
Mm-hmm. And then he's been quiet ever since.
He hasn't said much. I'm really looking forward to Poison: A Doctor's Dilemma 2.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the sequel there.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll be pretty good. think he's gonna move on to, instead of like poisoning the water, he's gonna be putting it into the food this time, and then in the third one, the big finale is gonna be pills.
Oh yeah, that sounds like good.
Build it up.
Water's easy to contaminate.
Right.
Food's a little bit more difficult, like
Right.
putting it in your Big Mac and everything, and
Of course.
then cyanide and pills. Coincidence? Question mark.
But at this point, James he's gonna retire from the crime game.
Yeah,
So
I mean, he's served his time. He's done his
13 years.
yeah
of prison line.
for basically probably killing 7 people.
Yeah,
But so these Tylenol murders, they led to several copycats,
right. 270 in the same month.
which is just absolutely crazy to me.
Is there a poisoners like a Twitter?
how to poison pills?
Yeah, I think
the
James
crime
Arnold
book.
wrote that one.
Yeah.
Or, not James Arnold here. Roger Arnold.
Roger Arnold.
He drew inspiration. When he was serving his time in prison, he probably wrote a few how-to crime manuals.
So my favorite one of the copycats were, because we're picking favorites here, obviously. My favorite death, obviously, is the Excedrin capsules were laced with cyanide in Washington. Killed 2 people, Bruce Nickel and Suzanne Snow. And then at the end of the day, they ended up catching that person, and it was Bruce Nickel's wife who did it. And
Not a good look.
yeah, she obviously was not as good as my boy Lewis here.
James Lewis would
was
never do this to him.
Yeah, that's just something James Lewis's wife doesn't do because she's in debt of $511.
Yeah, she can't afford.
Can't afford to kill him.
Maybe they spent the 511 on the cyanide pills, and then he didn't deliver the cyanide pills.
Smart.
And they're like, so we're just gonna, we're gonna get cyanide from somewhere else, and then we're gonna blame it all on you.
That's actually a good strategy. I think I might do that if I'm ever in that dilemma.
If you're ever in the dilemma of losing $511 and some change buying cyanide,
Yes.
how expensive?
Which is a common dilemma.
Yeah, I does it tell you in the how-to manual of poisoning people with cyanide where to buy it?
I haven't ordered that on Amazon Prime yet, so I'll let you know once it comes in the mail.
Once it comes in?
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
I'll let you know.
I appreciate that.
So Diane Ells Roth, she was 23 in Yonkers, New York. She also died from Tylenol extra strength cyanide poisoning.
So the moral of this story is probably just don't buy Tylenol.
Don't buy Tylenol, which leads you to believe all the other powerhouses were probably like, it was probably a big relief that it wasn't them.
Right.
Like just like the Corona beer is suffering right now, that was Tylenol in the 80s.
Right. So the thing is, if you're going to the store and you're going to be the cyanide poisoner guy, the way to do it is they're going to always go for the big guys.
Right.
Advil or Tylenol.
Right, common, yeah.
But if you just go for like the store, the brand names,
That would have been the smart move because more people buy.
Right, it's cheaper.
Yeah.
If you're going to buy Tylenol, it's
But this
$5
dude was
more.
obviously way smarter than us two. So he probably knew that the capsules could last longer and
Tylenol.
not the cheap
That
shit.
could be it. That could be it. But,
I think that's the strategy there.
You never know, I'm just saying, if you're going, just don't buy Tylenol. Just get the other. This isn't, if Tylenol wants to sponsor us, though,
Yes,
go buy
Tylenol,
extra strength.
yes. Buy it and just smell it beforehand because
Right.
it could be cyanide.
Don't get the Tylenol bottle that smells like almonds.
If the cap is missing and it smells like almonds, maybe try it. Maybe take like a little nibble, and then if your mouth doesn't foam at the end of the day, then it's fine. You can take the whole thing.
So something I actually do is when I buy like a consumable thing, I don't get the one that's in the front. You got to go for like the one in the back because that no one's touched that one. That one's in the back. It's like newer, It's
That makes
the one
sense.
you
Yeah.
would go for.
Yeah.
So you want to go for those ones because they're not going to poison those ones. They're going to poison the ones in the front.
Yeah. I don't know though, because these guys aren't lazy though, so they might just
Scatter them around.
Yeah, that's the smart strategy at the end of the day.
But like if you're going and you're buying, the average person would get the first one, right?
Yeah, I would say, yeah, probably.
But this isn't the how-to manual of poisoning people.
Yes.
Here.
We'll eventually
another episode.
edit this in, and we'll get Mr. James Lewis to hop on and give him a little interview and say, "Hey, so how did you do this?"
We know it wasn't you, James.
We know it wasn't you, James. But if it was, we understand because
can you go
your
in
wife.
depth of how you would do this?
Yeah.
If it was you. I know it wasn't, but
So, James, if you're listening to this podcast, just email me at theworldwithince@gmail.com, and we'll get it started from there.
And bring your wife on. I'm very.
We do
interested
want your
to
wife
hear.
on. We'll have $511
Listen.
sitting on the table for her.
We'll set up a GoFundMe right now to repay the $511.
Yes, because
For
I'm
your
sure
wife.
that was such a huge thing for your marriage and everything. So
It was. I'm sure he saved his marriage by doing this.
I guarantee you did, because they stayed together.
They're
I mean,
still
at the end of the
together
day,
today, I
they're
believe.
still together, which just tells you love defeats all crimes,
It's
right?
true. Love is more powerful than anything.
Anything. Well, that's gonna wrap up our first episode. How do you feel, Ethan?
I think I'm gonna go buy some how-to crime manuals
I think I'm gonna buy some Tylenol after this. It made me a little hungry.
for some Tylenol.
Yeah, exactly.
some Tylenol?
Yeah, I'm craving some Tylenol. So maybe this could have been just a Tylenol strategy to get their name, because all publicity is good publicity, right?
Yeah, except like for the hundreds of millions of dollars they lost.
Yeah. Oops.
But maybe they made that back. And
Probably did.
I mean, they're still around.
But
This didn't destroy them.
thanks for listening, everyone. See you next week when we talk about our next topic.
See ya.
Thank you for listening to The World Within.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you for all you do.
Join our Patreon, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and catch us next week. Thank you.